Hi there, thank you so much for coming along to part one of our free DXO workshops. This time it's all about PhotoLab and FilmPack in great detail. And if you are considering buying DXO products, please do use the discount code Conversation26. It helps to fund our wonderful workshops like this, which are being watched by thousands of people free of charge. Okay, Mac, we put this together months and months and months ago.
Maybe about 6 months ago, actually.
Felt like ages ago. And I remember when we put it in the calendar, I thought, that's miles away. You know, well, that's not going to come around it very quickly. And all of a sudden, here we are. So there are around 400 plus people who have registered for this, which is absolutely fantastic. And thanks to everybody who has shared it with their friends. But more importantly, thanks to Michael for coming along and doing this. It's great to have someone live in the room talking you through something. It's far better than just watching something on YouTube. So, Michael, I'll pass over to you to kick off whenever you're ready. Thanks for
Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm Michael Wayne Plant. I work for DXO as Global Product Specialist, and I'm responsible for training and working with influencers across the planet, where I help them learn the software and talk about various aspects of the software. I also help them with their websites and how to build profiles so that they can then help us to promote our software. So it's a really interesting job, and it's a real challenge because there's so many things happening all the time in the software space for DXO, but also for general photography everywhere. So I'm going to start with introducing you to our website, give you a quick overview because this is the first in a series of videos that we've been doing. And for those of you who don't know, that DXO has been around for over 20 years now, and we have a core suite of products that are all sold via a license. So you don't actually rent them, you own them, you can use them for as long as your computer and operating system works, and as long as you haven't upgraded a camera, it will function and do what you need. In that regard, our core software happens to be PhotoLab, which is our flagship program. And tonight we're going to talk about PhotoLab and we're going to talk about FilmPack. FilmPack's one of my favorites, but there's a couple of little gotchas that we're going to talk about, which will explain why it is actually one of my favorite ways of actually converting digital files into images that look like they've been made with film. So we're going to start with one other thing that I think is really important. On the DXO website, whenever you go to the website, we have tries and we have the buy buttons. But if you scroll all the way to the bottom of their website and go to this help and support link, click on that. This will bring you to this page. Whenever you click on an explore button, it will take you into the website and give you all the information on every aspect of the program. So if you're using the software, there's a couple of things inside the software that will do some of this, but this is the more detailed descriptions of every tool within the software. So it's a really useful resource to have and to know where to access it. So without further ado, I'm going to launch into PhotoLab and show you how it works. So to start with, PhotoLab is one of these great programs where it does not need a catalog. So from that point of view, if I take a folder, which I've created for today's session, and just drop it on the icon in my desktop, it will launch the program. And when it launches the program, it will launch it and put you right into the folder that you've just opened. Now, the first thing it will do, and one of the strengths of DXO's software is that we have all these lens and camera profiles. So any camera that's been profiled with its lens, if this dialog box comes up, it will actually pop up and say, you're missing the profile and can you download it? So because this is actually a collection of different cameras, different things, I'm going to download the relevant folders or files. And I know in here that I do not have or have never used the Konica lens, so I do not need to download that one. to load it and go straight to it. So we're ready to go. We're able to start working with any images. And from here, we start up in the top left corner with the photo library and the customize. The two controls here are the basic two areas of PhotoLab. So in the photo library, you can sort, look at images, you can look at your EXIF data, you can add keywords, you can look at the histogram, you've got all of your folder file structures. So right now you're actually getting to look inside my computer, inside my hard drive, to actually see how I structure my images and folders all contained within a catalog. So because it's not using a catalog, it is able to then access and see all of my images everywhere in the computer at any one time. Now, we're going to be working from this folder here, which is actually on my desktop. So I'm going to go to desktop, and within the file structure, I'm actually going to add it to my favorites. So if I misplace it at any time, I can't come back to it. I can just click in favorites and go to it. So I go to plus. It's on my desktop, so go to there, select the folder, put open, and see how I've now added it to my favorites. Each time it opens up as a separate folder, it will bring this up if there are missing dialog box. And I have it set so it automatically shows this every time. So I can now close my folders off. Within PhotoLab, you have your favorites, recent searches, folders, and a thing called projects. Now, projects are a bit like using Lightroom's catalogs in that you can create a project from multiple folders and you drag and drop the images from any folder in here into a folder here. So for instance, I've got the Camera Vision Session 1 folder up. I've got a photo that I want to add to to my projects. Just drag it in and drop it on the projects, and it will now show up in the projects down here. So you can see how I'm then able to move from one folder to another very quickly. Whenever you see a question mark on an image, it means there might be no profile for it, so it won't display properly. Most of the time the images will just load very quickly into it, but sometimes you will get a question mark, in which case then that image is not, there's something wrong with either the file or there's something wrong with it's not been profiled. So I'm going to close my folders off, back into my favorites, and for now I'm going to turn that off. So the way the interface works is anytime you hover over the side, you can remove, add, take this one out, down. You can move all these around. So you can see your images very big, very small, still have lots of space in here. Right. You can also, if for those of you, and I'm one of them, who has a second monitor, so I use a laptop with a second monitor, I can also come here and undock my image browser. That image browser is now flown off to the other monitor. So this is my image browser, which is able to live on another monitor. So I can see just the image. I can work with my folder structure back in here, and it means I can navigate very quickly then with my arrow keys backwards and forwards between images. So very quick to navigate. Now from there, we're going to then start playing with images, and one of the changes that I think has made PhotoLab so cool in the last generation is we went into AI masking. Now before I proceed into that, I want to show you an image which I've got on my dock, if it will come up. Now, one of the things that I think is important when you're thinking about images and processing them is, and I'm going to ask Mark what he thinks when he sees this image and what do those lines mean to him.
Oh, fantastic. Those lines to me might mean where I might like the edges burnt down perhaps, or the composition affected, but there's a lot of curves in there as well. So perhaps layers of darkening. I'm not sure.
Okay, so let me start by being a bit more descriptive of this image. This is James Dean walking down Broadway in New York, image made on film in the 1950s. Right? When we were darkroom printers, the darkroom printers would be able to go into a darkroom and go, I need to have more exposure. I'd change the f-stops. I'd have more time. I might use different grades of film for here to here because of the tonalities. So this would be a reject print of this picture with all the darkroom instructions that the printer has written on it, and or the photographer has written on it to say, this is how I want my print printed. If you take this analogy and then apply it to localized masking and specifically AI masking, you can now recreate this with color digital files so easy. So that's why I wanted to show that, because it's a really good example of how you can work and think differently about processing raw files. Now, when you start with the customize area, you've got your histograms. Up in this corner, you've got highlight warning, shadow warnings showing up in here. You've got your image. You can zoom in to see it at 100%. See how you've got the box in here. You can move it around to navigate. Go back up to full screen mode. You've got your EXIF data, so we can see this was actually made on a Nikon D2X. It was shot quite a few years ago, 2008 to be honest. So it's an image that was exposed to retain highlights, but you can see how much shadow details disappeared in here. The next thing that you're working on within PhotoLab, we've got these controls over here that will change access to all your tools. So you've got your color adjustments, and I keep forgetting to turn this on, your color, your brightness, your effects, including DeepPRIME, which is something I will talk about more in a minute, and also various things that come out of ViewPoint and other correction things. And then you've got all of the things that will be goodness that you get out of the FilmPack under FX, and then you've got your localized adjustments. And across the top of your localized adjustments, you've got the AI masking, you've got the control points, control lines, luminosity masks, and brushes. So most programs now have this kind of localized adjustments. DXO's PhotoLab is the first, this version 9 is the first one where we've had AI masking. Prior to AI masking, I would have come in here, grabbed a localized adjustment and clicked on the image and maybe added multiples to make a selection. And that would then be one control mask. The trick with using these masks is to actually go into black and white so you can then see what is being selected and what is not. Anything that is black is not selected. Anything that is white is selected, and grays are to a varying degree. To adjust them, you're going to use Chroma, Luma, and Diffusion. So you can control how the diffusion and also opacity if you want to. So depending on how much it's working. So those things there will allow you to control what is being selected and what is not. But it's not always perfect. And I'll show you an image later where this really sings for us. So for now, I'm going to delete that because it's not what I'm really trying to show you at the moment. So to start with, I tend to work with the color first, then think about, do I need to make any global adjustments? Then I go straight into local. So I start with color, make sure that my color rendering is set the way I want it. And this will also come back to FilmPack later, which we're going to talk more about later. But to start with, I invariably use generic color rendering and then pick neutral color because that's my personal preference for how I want my images to render. We can choose whether we want them more vibrant, saturated. We can even go in here, and if we are a photographer that likes a particular camera and the way it works. So, Mark, what's your favorite camera?
It would have to be one of the 5 I've got behind me. Probably one of my XT5.
Ideally a digital one.
Oh, of course it's a digital. No, I do have a Yashica, actually. I do have a Yashica behind me as well.
Okay, so what was it?
It's a Yashica.
No, not the
Oh, sorry.
one.
XT5, excuse me.
So that's Fuji. So let's pick a Fuji. XT5's in there. So what I've now done, even though this was made on a Nikon D2X, by choosing camera body and this particular Fuji rendering, I'm actually able to recreate the rendering from your Fuji camera on this file, which is very useful, especially when you've got a project that might have been photographed over years and used multiple cameras. So you can imagine, you can actually go, well, actually, I preferred that camera, so I'm going to make all the images from that project have the same color rendering in the collection. So that's incredibly useful to have. You've gone silent there.
Sorry, I was just chatting away to myself, saying that's really powerful. I can see the use in that because I often take pictures with my little Ricoh camera as well, and that'd be interesting to get some consistency across there, across some of those images too.
Well, it's like I did a project in the City of London, started in 2015 and finished it in just about 2019. And at the time, I was a Sony Global Imaging Ambassador, so Sony used to give me lots of cameras. And I started on an A900. I finished it on, or I used an RX1R Mark II for a while. I used the A7R Mark II for a while. I used an A6300 for a while. I then bought an M9, and by the time I finished it, I'd used the M240 and the M10 all on the same project. So if I want all of those files to have the same sort of color response, then I can pick a camera body, pick the one that I preferred, and recreate that across the lot.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
So that's really useful. We've also got DCP profiles. You can even add in digital film. And when we get to it, we'll talk about the film renderings as well. You can also, if you wanted to turn an image into black and white, you would do that here as well. So it's a really simple way of doing. So always set your color rendering first before you do anything else, because the color rendering will affect the tonality within the frame. So we start with color rendering, and always in PhotoLab, make sure you're using the DXO wide gamut, which is the biggest, widest color space, so you're not clipping any of your colors. Most of us, when we first buy a camera and we use it, by default, the camera companies have sRGB as a color space, which sets up the way that your histograms work. When I was teaching photography, the first thing I would do is get everyone's cameras set for Adobe RGB. But when you go into Photoshop, Lightroom, and PhotoLab to do your raw conversions, we all have an internal color space, so we're not clipping any of your colors. And within PhotoLab, it's DXO wide gamut. So make sure that's set, not left on classic or legacy one, because it's a smaller color space.
Thank you.
All right. So from here, we're going to then start making some, well, there's one more step I do first. I then come in and look at my exposure. What I want to know is two things. And this is a dark image, so it's not going to show me what's happening with the highlights, but it will show me what's going to happen with the shadows. So I get an idea of what I can push and how far I can push my shadows. So I always look at what's possible in the image, and if I take it too far, what will degrade and what will stand up having too much noise. And this is a 100 ISO photo on a Nikon D2X, so it is a while ago. It's not the most newest camera. All right. I'll also look at what's happening with the shadows as well, so I can see if there's any problems in it. Then I reset that back to 0, and then I walk away from the global adjustments. Years ago, before we had, well, actually last year, before we had AI masking in local adjustments, I would have been making exposure adjustment. I would have been bringing in a smart lighting adjustment. I would have looked at highlight, shadows, midtones, blacks. I would have looked at the ClearView Plus and maybe adjusted contrast. But the issue is I would have been consistently trying to juggle all of these independently, and so that I didn't have a highlight blowing or a shadow that was blocking. So I was trying to make too many subtle adjustments by going backwards and forwards often. Now with local adjustments, I come into AI mask, and in AI masks I've got specific points, I've got minus points, I've got an area mask, so if I drag across, you can see I can just select one part, and it takes a second to draw. Unfortunately, I'm not on the fastest computer, and I'm still in black and white mode, which is a bad move. So you can see my mask. I then come here and make another mask. I'm going to select quite quickly so you can go through, and I can name all these masks as I'm going through. So I want to grab those 3 people and see how the bag's not been selected. So I come in here, instead of making another mask, I can click on the sub mask and drag that across, make another mask. And now if I click across the mask, you can see how it's the whole thing. If I make a selection, I'm just going to pick that one, and then I want to add to a mask, and I don't, or I forget to use submasks, this is the nice thing here. I can drag another selection across. We'll start here, and I'm trying to collect the people. It's not having it, so we can make another selection, and you'll notice how I've got an X mask on top. We'll show you how to fix that in a second. So I'm just dragging a couple of masks in, and then I can just drag one mask and drop them on top so that they're able to, helps if I click on it, and drop in. So you can see how now the mask is starting to build by just having dragged them on top of each other. So very quickly I can start making localized adjustments. Within AI masks, I can make up to 15 masks before I start hitting the limits of what's possible. So it's very easy to make a mask in here. If I've not got everything that I want, and this is a really nice thing, the way this is introduced, is I can come in here to brush and add a submask with the brush by just painting in to an area if I want, so I can mix both the traditional DXO masks with the AI masks very quickly. Now, if I didn't want that because it's a bit of a rubbish mask, I can delete that. I'm actually going to delete all of that one, which has got no folder, and I'm going to take that out for a sec. The other thing that we can do with AI masks is we've got these subject adjustments. So I can choose hair, face, subjects, people. So I can actually use it to have picked all of the people. However, I tend not to, because at the moment, these ones tend to slow the computer down just slightly compared to just making the area mask. So these ones are faster running at the moment. But as this is our first generation of AI masking, we're only going to get better at this and making this work even better. The other thing which is new in 9.6, which is the one version I'm on now, is once you've made a mask, you can adjust it with changing your opacity and your diffusion. So you can soften the edges down if it's making too hard an adjustment. So this is actually new in this version that came out about a week ago. So you can also adjust the opacity of it, so if it's not too much, and the diffusion. So the masks are very flexible. So I'm just going to finish off making a couple more masks in this. And the first one I want is background. So see how it's picked up the shadow of this guy here. I don't want that. So I'm then going to come in here, make a sub mask, adjust, click in there, so that now my mask should be complete. Okay, so from there, we are then going to make a few adjustments. We're going to start with the first guy. I'm going to take him down exposure-wise, and I'm going to adjust his shadows. And I want to make another mask on him because I want to deal with the bag because it's a bit too bright. So I'm going to take the redness out of the bag, and I'm going to click in the red in the HSL channel, slide my saturation down on that. So see how I can really control localized adjustments. And the way I'm now thinking is everything in this frame is now adjustable based on local adjustments. So again, I'm going to make an adjustment. I'm going to push him a bit further. Whoops. take my highlights down, bring my shadows in. I want to make them a little sharper, so I'm going to increase my micro contrast. And this was zone focused on a 35mm lens, so depth of fields shouldn't be too much of a problem. The third person is this group. I'm going to take exposure down on them, but that's going to start introducing highlight issues here. So take the highlight back, control my shadows again, bump a bit of contrast in, and I want to tone her jeans down, so I'm going to go onto the blue and make just a slight saturation adjustment so that they don't look too vibrant. So you can see how I can quite quickly make quite a lot of adjustments. Now, this mask should be the background, and I want to adjust that, bring background into this, and I want to dig into the shadows so I can see into the store a bit more. So you get the idea now. Quite quickly, I've made a few adjustment masks, and I'm now actually able to change how that picture looks quite rapidly. Is there any questions on this so far from the audience?
Yeah, we do. Thanks very much, Michael. Absolutely thoroughly interesting seeing that. And what was really captured our attention was the speed at which you could add those masks, because they are so fast, aren't they? So fast and accurate as well.
They are very accurate. You can actually zoom in and actually see how good the masks are around the subjects. And as I say, if you're not quite happy with the mask, so the first mask was on the sky, I can come into the mask, not on the folder, but into the actual mask and adjust the diffusion of that mask. So that if I've overdone it or something, but generally you'll find that there are some bits where it looks like it's not quite right, but it actually, I've found that it works absolutely brilliantly. The only time that I might find a little bit is if it's a sunset or a skyline, where I might want to diffuse it a bit. Because the sky and the background are out of focus in the back of the frame, and it's not a hard edge, so you want to diffuse that change.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Diane just asked an interesting question about the wide color gamut or the wide color space.
Yes.
Diane said that using the DXO one, does that then transfer to other editing platforms when you're exporting out of DXO PhotoLab?
It's an internal color space. So when you export out, so I'll show you how the export works. Within the export, it's just really quick and easy to use. It's Command K brings this export dialog box up. Now, what it does, I'm going to turn these off for a second, and why I love this way of thinking about an image is every time you want to export, and I know all of us use our images for multiple things. If I want a TIFF file for printing, I need a TIFF file out for printing, and I'm going to want a certain recipe for that. I then have a website, and I then have an iPad, and I have my portfolio on my iPad. So if I ever go and show someone, I want to be able to export out to my iPad. So I have JPEGs for tablet, JPEGs for website, and TIFF files. Now, depending on, and if I've got all three of these ticked, so whenever you're in PhotoLab, if there's a blue mark against the boxes, anywhere down here, anywhere here, that means that tool is active. So at the moment, my TIFF file is going to my desktop with no subfolder. It is, if I wanted to, I can rename the file as I export. So there are recipes you can create to rename it. And I've taken to actually naming all my files now, so I no longer have to do this. But if you chose to call this picture something other than what it was named, you can rename it here if you want to. I always set my resolution 300 dpi. I am not adjusting my sizing for this particular instance, but I will always export as Pro Photo RGB as a TIFF. If I'm printing, I want the most image quality and the most range of colors. So to future-proof, I always export out as Pro Photo RGB. From what I understand and have been told, DXO wide gamut is an internal color space, is very similar, that's the best way I've been told to describe it, to Pro Photo RGB. If you're printing to an inkjet printer at the moment, most of the time, or if it's going to CMYK printing, so if you're printing business cards or something like that, or a brochure or anything, in an RGB color space, you'll probably find that Adobe RGB is sufficient. If it's going to the web, you want none of those, you want sRGB. So you can see how this for tablet goes to my desktop, it goes into a subfolder called iPad because that's what I'm using. It's enabled to resize for 2048 pixels. So that's the longest size of the file, perfect for the iPad. And it's exported as sRGB. sRGB is the color space for most people's monitors. Website, same deal. Resize for my website is 1500 pixels. It's what my website theme says is best. sRGB, again, because it works best for web space. Very few people, unless they are photographers, will have a dedicated color managed Adobe RGB capable monitor. I think you're one of those, Mark.
I think there are a few sad people in here like me, actually, Michael.
Yeah, and photographers should have Adobe RGB color space monitors because you will see more of your colors in it. However, if you don't have it, then you're not seeing everything. And if you're seeing it on an iPad or something, then sRGB is perfectly fine. Right? But what this means, so if I'm exporting two JPEGs out at the same time, I do not want to, and this is a gotcha that is possible to cause you a problem, you do not want to write them all to your desktop. Any ideas why?
Well, I would have thought file size, but I'm getting them all organized. What is the reason?
It's to do with you would overwrite one with the other, because they're going out with the same file name unless you're renaming them specifically for web or JPEG. So they get so I invariably have two folders on my desktop. One is website and one is iPad. It's shorter than writing tablet, so that's why it's there. So from that, I can then just hit export, and I've got three files sitting on my desktop. Two are inside folders, and I'm good to go.
Fantastic. Thank you. Great advice generally, actually. Thanks very much, Michael.
Yeah.
A couple of other questions, and I'll let you carry on. David asked whether PhotoLab has a color mixer panel similar to Photoshop.
I haven't used the color mixer panel in Photoshop for years.
Okay. So we could come back to that in a later session then, perhaps.
We can come back to that into a later session, and I can't tell you definitively yes or no. The area that would give you a similar sort of thing is the HSL and channel mixer. So whether this channel mixer does the color mixer, until I go back into Photoshop to have a look, I can't tell you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've saved David's question, and don't worry about it, David. It's on my little file here, so I've got that one.
Yeah, because I need to know how the color mixer actually works in Photoshop, because the thing PhotoLab will not do, it won't replace Photoshop for you. As a photographer, you've got to think of what is your workflow and how you're going to work. PhotoLab can work in conjunction if you're a Lightroom user as an alternative way of processing your images. It could also be used as a replacement to Lightroom. However, its library function isn't as fully featured as Lightroom is. So you've got to think about what is your catalog structure to start with, and can you use this program in conjunction with your existing workflow, or can it replace or can it supplement? Now, to give you an example, years ago when I was a film photographer and I would shoot black and white film, I would invariably have a slow ISO film, a mid-speed, which basically was 400 ISO, and invariably I'd have 3200 T-Max in my cupboard. But when I'd go into the darkroom to process those films, I would never ever have just one developer in the darkroom. I'd have Rodinal if I wanted grain. I'd have if I was using a slow film and I loved Technical Pan, I'd have the Technical Pan developer there. And if I wanted to have something that had really great tonal range, I'd have D76. D76, when you used it with stand development, gave you incredible tonal range and very little grain. And you could use those three developers over your different films. But if you think of your films like your digital negatives that are coming out your camera, each film is equivalent of, say, the camera type, and it will have its own tonal response and quality. But every developer will be able to do something different with that film. So the combinations of those meant that you could achieve a lot with your files. So when you now think about raw converters, which is what Lightroom is, it's what Capture One Pro is, it's what PhotoLab is, it's like there's a load of them now. But there's effectively two main ones that the professionals currently use, which is Lightroom and Capture One Pro. Capture One Pro, if you're a photographer who does shooting in a photo studio, nobody can beat their tethering at this point in time. So if you're a if you're a studio-based photographer, you're probably going to use Capture One Pro. If you're a general photographer and you've bought the photography plan, you're going to be using Lightroom and Photoshop. Both of those programs require a catalog. You can't do anything without the catalog in them. And that's why I started this session with saying PhotoLab does not use the catalog. So you can have your photography plan, you can have your Photoshop, you can have your Lightroom, and you can look at your images and manage your catalog in Lightroom. And you can then process with PhotoLab. And think about your raw conversions in a slightly different way as, will PhotoLab give me the colors and tones I want from this, or will Lightroom do it? And a lot of photographers are starting to see the appreciate that difference, and the tools will give you different things. When I first started working for DXO about 3 years ago, I was doing product liaison, working with influencers, and one of the things that struck me was that a lot of the reviewers at the time were writing reviews that were saying, but it doesn't give me the same kind of results, or I can't quite get it to the same thing. And it took me a while to realize actually that should be the point of why you have different raw converters. Because every raw converter will have a different tonal response, a different color science, a different way of looking and digging into shadows, or dealing with highlights, dealing with high ISO. And those are the strengths of having different choices. Okay, so we're going to jump out of that image, go back to my photo library, and
just to let you know, we're getting towards the 45-minute point. You asked me to give you a nudge.
Okay. Are there any questions before you turn around and say we need a break now?
Well, I think one might drop in well here, actually. Jenny's just commented about keywords and searching for images, especially as you were just talking about using this from folders. So what's the approach to keywording or searching?
Okay, keywording is under keywords. You've got keywords and keyword lists, so you can add keywords. Keyword lists are the list of the keywords you've ever used in your life. You can also import a keyword hierarchy, which is the same sort of thing that you can use within Lightroom. And when you click on that, you can then just click on it and it will apply that keyword to the image. So using the keyword list is a very short, quick way of actually putting who, what, where, why of keywords into the images. So it's a really quick way. And if anybody wants to use this, I would suggest you Google keyword lists, and you will find a list of things that will give you quick ways of adding this to it. So you can import this into your program.
Super.
Now,
thank you.
Once you've got your keywords, and as far as I know, this image doesn't actually have any keywords on it, they will show up underneath here. I have actually taken to using a completely different program from a company called Exire to AI keyword my images, but often I forget to export them so that they actually say the words here of what's in them. So these images, I haven't actually got the keywords on them. I've become really bad at keywording over the years, and I've been a digital photographer since 2004. And it's only been in the last year that I've actually gone, you know what, keywording is really important. And I've started using it. Now, one little thing that I've talked about before we go to the break, within PhotoLab, see how I've got these two images sitting side by side and it's saying 1 of 2 and 2 of 2. If I want to make, and this is what's called a virtual copy. So if I've got an image that I want to adjust and I want to see a reference or I want to adjust it differently, I can right click on it and come here and go create virtual copy, or use a keyboard shortcut of Command D, and that will put a copy of it, a virtual copy, not a physical copy, into PhotoLab for me to then be able to take that picture, go into customize and make some adjustments to it. So on this one, again, I'm going to do the same technique I do. I want generic rendering. I prefer my colors to be as neutral as possible. When you scroll over, you will see how the images change. So it does give you a preview of the rendering. I'm then going to go to my exposure, look what happens to my highlights, look what happens to my shadows when I do it, go back to normal, come back into here, make localized adjustment. This is how quick you can do this. Localized adjustment, AI mask. I'm going to pick sky. That's done. Make another mask. Pick people. It's detected the people. They're done. And I'm then going to make one mask here for the greenery. Perfect. And I'm going to add to the mask the bottle. And then I want to make another mask for the greenery in the background and see how it's different tones. So it's not quite selected it. So I'm going to come in here, make a sub mask, do a drag across there. See how it's picked my trees up. I'd make maybe 2 more masks or the flags because they're different, but I'm not going to do that because we're going to go to a break in a minute. And then from here, we'll start with the sky. And I want to make my sky a little darker. I want to punch my highlights. And this is where ClearView comes in beautifully because it can actually bring in your contrast nicely. Maybe give it a little micro contrast. Go into the people. I want to adjust my highlights. There's a bit of hot highlights in there. Maybe give them a bit of ClearView so it increases the contrast. ClearView, if you take it too far, will really push and adjust your contrast. And if I jump in, I'll show you why I don't like using it on people. See how his skin tone is, close that off. See how it's really exaggerated his skin tone and made it look really blotchy. So be very careful when you're using ClearView on people's skins, but it's really good for giving it a bit of punch. However, when I'm in here, if I want to control the reds, it's a little trick I've learned, is I come in here on portraits, change it to red in HSL slider and just down the saturation a little bit, and it cleans up the skin tones nicely. So that's a little insider tip on that. Go back to this one, bring it back to 100%. What was this mark? And I can actually go in here and name them. So this is hedge. And normally when I'm working, I would actually name everything so I can find it later. Hedge is, I want it lighter. Actually, no, I don't. I want it darker. So let's drop the exposure down so it disappears. And what I then do, and why I think this AI masking is so useful, especially in color photography, is not only are you adjusting your tones and your contrast and everything in the frame, you're also directing where somebody looks, because we tend to look at the bright points or we look at the points that are lighter. So for instance, if I wanted to stop people looking at this part of the frame here, I would actually make another mask of just this bit, select that mask out and take him and tone that down so that being all the reds. I would then turn around and adjust my saturation on those reds. And you've got to be subtle with it, otherwise it'll just look wrong. But I can actually tone that saturation down so that that red no longer becomes something that you're automatically looking at. All right.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Any questions before we go?
No, I don't think so. There's a few questions, but I'm going to hold on to a couple of them until after the break, if that's okay, Michael. We've thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been great to see this in action. It really has. Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. All right.
What I'll do is I will pause our recording. Thanks very much, Michael. You can carry on whenever you're ready. We're really...
Okay. I did notice there was a question in the comments which I wanted to address. And it related to where does DxO keep all the information? Now, you'll know if you're a Lightroom user, there's two aspects to a Lightroom catalog. And one of those aspects was you can force Lightroom to save all of the information in the Lightroom catalog, which is how it is by default. And you can also get it to retain all the information in an XMP file if you so set it. And that's set in the catalog preferences, not Lightroom preferences. So Lightroom has two sets of preferences. One is in Lightroom itself and the other is in each catalog. So you can set each catalog up to save your information to an XMP file. XMP file, so for instance, this picture here has a .dot file and an XMP file. The XMP file are always quite small and they hold all the star ratings, the key rating, words, anything that you've written into the file that is done through either Photoshop or Lightroom, if you've set your Lightroom catalog up to write to an XMP file. I personally, years ago, decided that I would force my Lightroom to write to an XMP file for one simple reason. If you lose your Lightroom catalog through it corrupting, and you haven't got a good backup system, and you haven't managed to load the backup up to make it work again, then all the work that you've done in your Lightroom catalog is gone. It's just kaput. If you forced your Lightroom catalog to write everything to the .xmp file, which is tiny, which will live alongside the raw file, all you have to do is re-import everything. And as you're re-importing everything, Lightroom goes, oh, here's the information, and it applies all that information back to the file. So it's a good tip to know. And when I was teaching, what I found that I was using my Lightroom catalog on multiple computers, on multiple hard drives, and invariably something would go wrong. So I ended up doing this to my Lightroom catalogs at the time. Now, I understand that Lightroom has got more stable over the last few years, and it's also sped up. But because it's a catalog-based system, I still don't quite trust it. So I always force my Lightroom, if I'm using Lightroom, to write to an XMP file. When you're doing any of these changes, adding all this information, adding your keywords, your star ratings, everything, in PhotoLab, it will write a .dop file. So as long as the DOP file is with the raw file, you've got the information with you at all times. So that's really easy to find. So I hope that answers that question in a bit more detail than me writing a line in the text.
And I think that also answers Danielle's question that in an emergency, all the edits are stored in the DOP file. So the XMP is the equivalent to the DOP.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Brilliant.
Right. So we've got the ability to use double files and compare them if you want. You can also apply, for instance, so to give you an example, and this is a good introduction at this moment in time to FilmPack. So within PhotoLab, in the color module, I'm going to go to color rendering, and I'm actually going to pick neutral black and white. But before I do that, black and white film. So I want black and white film. In black and white film, This is a FilmPack thing. You've got the ability to choose a film type, and let's pick something creative, 25 AG. But if I then want to give it a grain structure, I go into the, and I always lose this, the effects panel, click on grain. At the moment it's set for ADUX 25, AG 25, so it's a low grain film. But what if I want to change that so that it actually is something a bit more significant? I can choose black and white film, and here I'm going to pick 3200 T-Max if I can find it. And Kodak 3200 T-Max. Now that's going to give me much more grain. You can see it in the sky here. See how it's really grainy? Now the advantage of using FilmPack inside PhotoLab or as a standalone program is that you can use the raw files. If you're going to use FilmPack as a filter in Photoshop or as a filter in Lightroom, it has to convert the file from a raw file into a TIFF file first, then do the work the same way the Nik Collection will do work on TIFFs and JPEGs. My personal preference and why I've taken to liking FilmPack is I'm a PhotoLab user. I can actually work on the image as the raw file inside FilmPack inside PhotoLab, which has implications then for all the other aspects of this image. So for instance, at the moment the color version has all of these masks on. The black and white version has none of the masks on. If I want to put the masks on or make different masks, I'll start by copying those masks. I can come up here to Image, Copy, Correction Settings. Go back to the other image and go Paste Correction Settings, and this time I'm only going to paste local adjustments. So all the AI masks are now available. I haven't adjusted any color, any tone or anything. So you can see how my masks are all here. I can now, because it's a raw file, I can start thinking about these things separately to how I would have done if it was just a TIFF or a JPEG. Because I'm still working on the raw file, I can now start making much more sophisticated adjustments which are non-destructive because they're not off the TIFF file. How cool is that? I can see Mark nodding away there.
Yeah, no, I'm trying not to. I've got to keep my microphone, otherwise you'll hear all the other noises I'm making. No, this is very cool, really powerful, isn't it?
It's really cool, but it also allows me to now, because I'm in the raw file still, and I've got all these maskings, I can then start thinking, am I going to make some global adjustments again or local adjustments? I'm able to work with all my local tools on the raw file in black and white mode. Or if I'd chosen here, instead of black and white mode, color mode, and decided that I wanted, say, color positive film, and I wanted to make it look like Kodachrome 64, and I wanted to add the grain. See, at the moment it's still grain of 3200 T-Max. So I can mix and match my grains. I can also, because it's FilmPack, and this is what I love about the grain in FilmPack, is, and it will show up the most here, see how it says format auto 24 by 36, that's 35mm film. If I wanted to recreate it, if it was large format or medium format, I just select that and it will tone the grain down. So it's able to give me a variety of film effects of grain structure based on the film type. Now, we all know that Kodachrome 64 never came in large format and it was never that grainy. So we're still all in the film grain for black and white. I can go back to color positive film. I could even just pick current color profile, which will actually give me Kodachrome. I personally like to do it this way, so I know that I've got both the same structure and tonality within the film. And Kodachrome was never a medium format, and it was never a large format, so it's always 35mm. So it's a real simple adjustment. And if you are using Kodachrome, you'll notice how the skin tones went a bit more red because it is in a local adjustment, and we're on, I'll scroll up so we can get to it, find the right one for people. I can also go back into here and adjust my skin tone so it takes that redness out of the skin with a local adjustment. So I'm not then adjusting any other tones but just the skin. I could have even come in here and made another mask just for faces to deal with that issue that Kodachrome specifically gets. So within the program as well, and what I like about this is when we're here inside the let me go to a high ISO image so we can see it. So I'm hoping you can all see the noise in this picture. It's shot at 32,000 ISO on an A7S, not the Mark II, but the A7S. A7S was notorious for really good high ISO, but 32,000 is really pushing it. You can see the noise and the grain structure in here. So if I turn DeepPRIME XD3 on, which is new and 9.6, see what's happened to my noise. It's amazing. I can come in here and then do all the other adjustments before I start. And I forgot one little gotcha that I think is important that everyone knows. When you are using AI masks, before you start using AI masks, please turn on this distortion. Now, this was shot with, I believe, a 24-70 Carl Zeiss lens on the A7S. So it's not the latest G Masters. And you can see when I turn distortion on, look at what happens to the barrel distortion on this lens. This is the DXO module adjusting the lens to correct the angles within the frame. So do that before you then go into your localized adjustments, and your masks will work flawlessly. So, any questions so far on what we've talked about here?
No, nothing specifically about what you've spoken about there. There's a couple more general questions, but not.
Okay, let's deal with them now.
Okay. So Danielle asked about when you were talking about using the DOP files, or those DOP files being there to secure the settings. Is there something that you have to do when you're dropping in the folders into PhotoLab that says also create a DOP, or does it automatically create?
It automatically creates a DOP file. Okay. And as long as you keep the DOP file, and if you've got any XMP files with the raw file, it'll read it every single time.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that one. And then we just had a quick question from Jan, and then we can carry on. But the quick question from Jan was about a list of the cameras and lenses that DXO include for their editing. Okay. Is there a way we can find that quickly?
Yes, there is. DXO's website. And on the DXO website, I'll go back to the front of it, you'll see cameras and lens corrections. I believe it's there. If not there, let me take you there and just double check. No, it's not there. There is a point on the website, and it is down here. I'm having trouble. Can I come back to you on that one?
Yeah, this may be something that I can send out in the email.
Yes, that will be. There is a link on the website that will show it to you, and I always thought it was there. And basically what it will do is you enter the camera, you enter the lens combination, because it works in both combination with the lens and the camera, and it will then give you the information, because I do believe it was a question about Lumix cameras. We do support Lumix cameras. I have seen that.
Yeah. Oh, well done for remembering that.
Yeah. It was always in our press releases. Once a month, every month, except for I think it's August and December, DXO releases updates for the optics modules. And I don't know if you know if you've ever looked at this or anyone has, and they look at the total number of optics modules and go, how do we get to such a high number of optics modules when there's not that many lenses in the world? It's because if you've got, say, for instance, the lens on this camera is a 24 to 70 zoom lens, we can't just do one profile for a 24 to 70 zoom because it will have barrel distortion at one end and it might have pin cushion at the other end. So we will do a profile at 24, at 28, at 35, at 50, at 70 for that lens. And that's why there are so many optics modules that get released even for a 24 to 70 lens, because it needs to be able to be profiled at each of those, because the camera will be telling you what focal length. See how here in the EXIF data it tells me this was made at 24 millimeters. It will show me that on a different lens on the same, at a different photo on the same lens at a different focal length here, and it needs to be able to pick that up and actually work to it.
Yeah, super. Thank you. Thank you.
So that's very useful.
And a big thank you to Ian as well, who's just multitasked and gone on and found the link, and I've just put that in the chat as well. So thanks.
Perfect. Thank you.
Gold star to Ian. But no further questions. Thanks very much, Michael.
Now, there is one thing I really love about AI masking, and I've become such a convert to it that I've taken to using it for practically all of my raw conversions in PhotoLab. I've even started using it in Camera Raw because I use a Leica monochrome camera, which is not supported by PhotoLab because unfortunately PhotoLab cannot demosaic the raw files from a monochrome camera. So if you are keen in buying the Ricoh GR4 monochrome camera, it won't be supported. Any ideas why?
No, but I was looking at that camera myself, Michael, so I'm interested.
Yeah, I've looked at it as well. I got to actually do a talk for Ricoh when they launched the GR4 range, and they actually sent me out a GR4 3 weeks before the camera got launched, and I was in Australia at the time. And they then also gave me the GR3X to play with. Both cameras came up brilliantly inside the software. I even got DXO to send me a pre-release version of the software with that profile for that camera prior to its launch, or prior to it being available to the general public for my talk. And I was like, this is great. Now, to give you an example, this is actually an image shot in Australia on the GR4. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this and why I've become such a convert for AI masking, and you'll notice my global adjustments, there's nothing applied to it except for not even a exposure adjustment. I've gone in and adjusted the settings for generic rendering, and it's set for the camera profile. And then all I've done is come in here and made 3 masks. So, and I've got 3 pictures, which the other 2 have no masks on. And you'll see how the gentleman sitting here, this is my father, please meet him. He is sitting here in the hospital, wherever, and he's at different angles, different viewpoints. And I'm going to take this picture, I'm going to copy all the settings, select the other 2 images, go back up to paste all settings this time, and it's going to draw the masks back on. And watch how the masks change as it's drawn in for each one. Takes a second for them to come up, but see how each mask has actually changed for each image, because it's the AI mask that we're using that is showing different masks.
That's fantastic, isn't it?
If you take a fraction longer to make one change or changes using the AI masks here, and then apply them across a whole collection of images, you can have that processing, that specific processing across a collection. So that can actually speed up your processing for whole batches of images.
Yeah, absolutely superb.
And I think that is just absolutely brilliant. However, I will tell you a little problem. If you come in here and you then go, you know what, that sky doesn't look so cotton here, but it's okay, but I maybe want to make some changes. And I then apply it to this one and see how my skies are different and see how it's not drawn in here. So if I then try and fix that with any of these other tools, that is specific to that specific area, and it won't automatically redraw across the next one. So that's why sometimes these masks are not as useful combined with these masks. So you have to think very easily or clearly which works for you, which doesn't. Now, I want to show you one more thing with regards to the masking within, how can I say, with the control points in PhotoLab. I think it's in this folder here. And the reason why I show it to you is this is Australia in the summer. See how I've got some nice trees happening in here, but they're all a bit bleached out. See how the next picture, they're all nice and green, and I've got one mask in here with a control point. I'm going to go back into this picture, which is a duplicate of that. So there's two virtual copies here so we can see the two. I'm going to come into my paintbrush, actually not my paintbrush, local adjustment, control point. I'm going to click on. Now, how control points work is you drag out to make them bigger, you click in the center to move them around. You can add multiple control points and drag them around to make selections. I'm just going to drop a few control points around this tree before I do the next stage. And maybe those are a bit too big. So you get the idea. I've got some adjustment control points. Maybe drop a small one in there. A little one over there and one end fill there. Right, now, if we go back from color overlay to black and white, see how this is starting to make selections, but I'm not quite happy with it. I'm going to adjust my chroma. See how it's almost selected. Adjust my luma. So now, can you see how really it's dug into the tree? To pick that out, I can adjust my diffusion, which won't do the trick. See how it makes it hard edges? I can adjust the opacity if I wanted to. And turn that to there. Now, out of black and white, and here, with this mask active, I'm just going to take my color temperature. See how it's only affecting the trees, nothing else. How cool is that?
This is really fab. That kind of granular control using those control points is really powerful, isn't it? As well as quick.
It is available in the Nick collection. It came from the Nick collection. It's the reason why Jerome, who owns DXO, wanted the Nick collection when it was offered to him. It is the thing that we used to use before AI masking, and it can be used with this level of control, can be used with control points, with graduated controls. You've got all of these other controls that have been in both the Nick collection and PhotoLab for a very long time. But combine those with the AI masking means you've got superb level of control of making selections. And the way I now see image adjustments, so I've got, at the moment, I've got control point one mask. I'm going to go into AI mask, just come up down here to sky, let that select the sky, and then from there I can adjust the sky in this picture, maybe adjust my highlights. And then the other thing that we can talk about in PhotoLab, which will be subject of another video session that we're going to be having, is I'm in here, I've got this perspective control, I can adjust my angles and verticals within a frame. So I'm going to click on this. This is what I love about ViewPoint. So this is just a bit of a hint of what you can do with it. So see how I'm adjusting my verticals in the frame. Hit apply, and that will straighten everything up and give me an area that I need to crop. So I just put the crop in, and there's my picture ready to go.
Yeah, it's so good.
That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely superb. Thank you. Thank
So
you.
that is That is built into PhotoLab as a plugin. So you've got your two plugins here. If they're showing up in PhotoLab, they will be here and as activated. If you haven't installed them or purchased them, then they will be there. There is a question that I had in one of the comments that I want to also address. And somebody bought Pure Raw 5 a month beforehand, and I sent them an email or message via the chat that was outside the window. If you were to Google, and I would highly recommend it if you are looking at updating, whenever you're looking at either purchasing or updating DXO software, Google when DXO released the last versions, and you'll notice a pattern. We are on about a yearly cycle for our main software. We're on about an 18-month cycle for FilmPack and ViewPoint. So if anybody was looking at the net collection, just Google it before you buy it in the next month.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, because that will solve any heartache that you might have, and it will mean that you can then you buy it at the right time. Yeah. And if anybody is buying the software, the best deals are always Black Friday. So if you don't need it now, it's come out, say, later in the year, you can wait till November, the Black Friday specials, you will always get the best price then. The other aspect of if you own DXO software, so I'm on version 9. If I had version 6 and I wanted to upgrade to version 9, that's a new license. But if I have version 7 and I want to upgrade to version 9, that gets the discount upgraded price. So there is incentives to buy it every second year, not every year, if you so desire. If you want to halve your software cost and you decide you want to use DXO software, you could buy it every second year and you would get a significant boost to your software. If you decided that, like, version 8 to version 9, where we introduced the AI masking, and you go, I really need this AI masking because it makes a big difference, then you're free to buy it this year versus last year, and you will still get the upgrade price. The thing that I like about the way we try and do our licensing is if we, and it's on us as a company, if we haven't actually released any compelling new features for you, you don't have to buy it. You can still keep using it forever. Well, not quite forever. As long as your computer operating system will run the software, you can run it, the software for as long as possible. The other issue is if you have, for instance, 6 years ago, maybe more, I bought a Nikon D850. I still use a D850. If I was still running software, which currently on Apple, I can still run the version that I bought when it was the D850 on my current operating system, so I could still be using the same software from 6 years ago for that software. As long as there was no new features that I really wanted in the software, I'd be happy. And my software wouldn't be changing every year for me to learn new tools.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you.
Because that's something that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah.
Is you get this software, you learn to use it, the company comes along, does an upgrade, and you're like, God, I don't understand where something's gone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Michael, thank you so much for today. It's been superb.
You're welcome. Do we have time for a quick little thing on FilmPack Standalone?
Let's go for it. I think if people are needing to go, that's fine, but otherwise we're good to go.
Okay, so FilmPack works as a standalone program. It will look at any folder you've got in the system, and I'm going to my desktop to the folder that is not showing up there. Did I move it? Click in. Oh, I know what I've done. When you launch can I drag that across? When you launch a program in any of the DXO software, there's a dialog box that comes up right dead center saying check for updates. You can click it to turn off so that you don't have it show up, but as it came up on my second monitor, I was trying to press buttons and I wasn't going anywhere. So in here, into this video, and I wanted to convert this picture here. So I'm going to open this picture up. This is a raw file. Now, as you can see, it's nice, vibrant colors. Within FilmPack, whenever you're in PhotoLab or you're in FilmPack, there's this wonderful little thing called Time Machine. Time Machine pops up as a separate window. It allows you to go through and pick an error and a processing recipe for that error. So for instance, if I want this picture to look like it was shot in the 90s and I wanted to give it a different rendering, we've got all these different renderings showing up here or here, and you can see the different results, and it will tell you who the photographer was, what kind of effects it were. I believe he used to use Tri-X, so it's got that punchiness to it. You've got that quality to it. You've got this color tonality, so you can pick, see it even tells you what film type it was. So you can get an idea of different tones and qualities. And when I was teaching, I used to do this essay on, or lecture on, every error has a color. We think of the 1930s, Mark. What do you think of the 1930s for photography?
Yeah, I think black and white, large format, grainy film.
Yeah, so you could pick 1930s and you'll find that sort of effect in here. You know, the 1950s was a Kodachrome era for me. The 1960s was gritty black and white because there was Tri-X available all of a sudden. That was the gritty Tri-X, not the soft one. So every era has a different way of looking. The 1990s was an era of color neg film. The 1980s in professional photography was the era of color transparency film. Coming up to 2010 and the present, it's now become more digitalized. So we've got all this history of photography, and you can pick an era and pick the type of rendering for that, click on that, and I'm just going to drag this off to one side, and you'll see how it's given me that error as a preset ready to start. So that's dealing with the contrast and the tonality all within FilmPack. If I'm not happy with that, I can go from presets to customize. Now it helps if I get rid of Time Machine first. So close, go into customize, and then from here I've got the ability, and you can see how this says Ilford HBS 800, its intensity, the grain, which is the same thing. If I want it more grainy or less grainy, I can choose that. Again, I can choose medium format, large format, or custom format if I want to. Because this is the raw file, I can come into development and also adjust my exposure, highlights, all on the raw file in the standalone app. So the ability to do that is brilliant. You've got luminosity masks, so you can start adjusting things and think about your images in the same way as Ansel Adam did with his own system. You've got the ability to make localized adjustments and frames, textures, and somebody I noticed had a question about, can you rotate film effects in the Nick collection, for example? And I would have said that in the Nick collection, think about freeform transformations to do that. But here you've got all of these advantages or things that you can start doing with an image. So you can adjust things like vignetting, everything that's available in here. And then save the image, and it will come out as that file saved, depending on how you want it to do, as either a TIFF or a JPEG. And you can choose whether it's compressed or a full 16-bit file. Okay, shall we answer any questions?
Well, believe it or not, we've got no questions, Michael. That was that's absolutely superb. Time Machine looks like quite an addictive thing to play with.
It is absolutely brilliant because it allows you to come in here, click on Time Machine, and it is just really addictive. You can choose lots of different things in here and choose what effect you want with it.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely looks like something we'll all be going to have a play with.
Yeah. And that's available in PhotoLab as well when you are in here with FilmPack installed in PhotoLab.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. In that case, we've got one final question from Di, but I'm going to switch off the Q&A now and just let everybody know that if they'd like to pop any comments, not questions, but any comments for Michael, please do put them in the chat. And I will send Michael the chat afterwards because there's still quite a number of people here, and it would be lovely to know that we've enjoyed this today. Diane, just while people are doing that, Diane has just asked, is there a print module on PhotoLab in the same way that there are on some Adobe products if you want to control the printing elements?
There are some, you can print from PhotoLab. However, I'm going to ask Diane to come back for the Nick Collection one, because I don't believe PhotoLab's the best way of printing. And that's to do with the fact that PhotoLab doesn't let you resize the image inside to a specific size. It will just, you can resize it on output, but the issue is that when you get into printing, most people don't apply the correct sharpening. And to fix the correct sharpening, you need to have the correct size print set for your print. So if you're printing for an A4, if we've got 2 seconds, I'll show you what I mean by that. Yep. As in, you need to be able to set an image. Let's just open up a TIFF file. Where did I put a JPEG? TIFF, that'll do. So when you've got an image and you've gone in, whoops, I meant to do that in, let's just open this in Photoshop. So this is Photoshop. When you go into Photoshop, before you print, the first thing you need to be doing is setting size. Once you've set size, sorry about that, was my phone. Once you set the size in Photoshop, you then have this thing called output sharpener. And the reason why you want to use output sharpener for printing is that it will allow you very quickly to set the correct sharpening parameters for any image that you don't get any other way. That's why I'm in the wrong one. So you set your sharpening first, open this up, and then you come in here, you set it up for your print, inkjet, you pick your viewing distance, your paper type, whether it's matte, luster, or glossy, and then you pick your printer resolution. You do that on a pre-sized image, and you can even set it up as a smart object, so it will output ready to print with the correct, correct settings and adjustable later, so that you get a perfectly sharpened print output. And it's the best way I've ever found of printing anything.
Oh, brilliant. I'm going to
and we're going to cover this properly in the Nick Collection video session.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm going to give you a round of applause. Absolutely superb, Michael. Well worth it. Well worth the 6 months in planning.
Yes.
So we will now see you. It will be quite a way until we see Michael again. But if anybody would like to share this with their friends, please do. And I look forward to seeing you and everybody at the next one, which I think is Pure Raw, Michael, isn't it?
Yes.
Fabulous.
And that's my website, if anyone wants to see my work.
Brilliant. I'll tell you what, Michael, I'll pop a link to that in the email out to everybody so that they can all go and follow you as well.
Perfect. All right. Well, it's a pleasure talking to you all, and have a very good evening, afternoon, day, wherever you are in the world.
Morning. Yep. Thanks, Michael. It's a brilliant session. See you next time.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.